This is the Romeo and Juliet exam tutorial designed to prepare you for the English literature exam. At this point in time, please make sure that you have a copy of the extract that will be required for today. And you will also need a pen. So if you don't have those, please pause and make sure you have those now. So the session aims for today are to annotate the text. This is a crucial skill. It doesn't involve simply highlighting. It actually means making notes as you read the text. Also reading for meaning. This is crucial to develop your AO1 skills, which is developing your understanding of the text. Also understanding and interpreting the text, which are crucial for AO1 also. You must show accurate interpretations and that you clearly understand the extract and the rest of the text. When will I respond to Romeo and Juliet? That's a good question. By now in your exam you should understand when you will need to respond to Romeo and Juliet. But in case you are unaware, that's for Literature Paper 1, Section A. You should spend 55 minutes on this particular question. So whenever you're doing a practice exam at home, it's important to time yourself. Don't give yourself too much time, otherwise you'll be at an unfair disadvantage, and when you do the real exam, you'll think that you actually have more time than you do. I would say maybe shave off 5 to 10 minutes of this time and give yourself less time than you actually have. Spend the first 10 to 15 minutes reading the extract and annotating. That is crucial. As I said before, don't simply highlight the text thinking that you're showing that you're understanding. You must be making notes. You must be thinking, this is an interesting use of language. Oh, I really understand this particular idea here. Note it down. It could come in useful later. And in fact, that's your plan. Don't forget to check over your answer. What's really important about this section is that you can pick up to 4 marks for SPAG. That could mean the difference between one grade and another. So please make sure you check over your answer, correcting any spellings. If you like to change a particular word to increase the sophistication of your vocabulary, that's really important. If you've missed out a punctuation mark, you've missed out quotation marks where you've actually taken a quotation, please look over your answer and check and correct it. So this is the extract that you will need for today, and I will repeat, if you do not have that now, please make sure that you have a copy of that and that you do have a copy of the pen, or that you have a pen to hand. What I'd like you to do is read the following extract and then we will look at the question. So the question asks you to read the following extract from Act 1, Scene 2 of Romeo and Juliet and then answer the question that follows. At this point in the play, Lord Capulet and Paris are discussing Juliet. Starting with this conversation, explain how far you think Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet as a good father. Write about how Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet in this extract, how Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet in the play as a whole. I would like you to pause the tutorial at this point, and I would like you to underline the key words in the question and also understand why you've underlined those particular words. Please pause now. Okay, hopefully you should have paused the video, and I'm now going to reveal to you the key words in the question that I think you should have underlined. Lord Capulet and Paris are discussing Juliet. That's crucial as it puts the extract in context, because this conversation could be about anything if you're unaware. Perhaps they're discussing what's happening in Verona, but it's not about that. They're not discussing about what happened to Lady Capulet. They are discussing Juliet. So that's important to remember and understand where this conversation fits in and what the topic of conversation is about. Next, how far you think Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet as a good father. That's crucial, as this is the focus of the question. This is the theme, the topic. How far you think Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet as a good father. So in essence, do you think Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet as a good father? To what extent? Lastly, and I would say perhaps the most important word in this question is how. How is so crucial. A very small word, but carries so much weight. Essentially, what the examiner is asking you to do is write about language, structure, and form, and their impact. Their impact upon presenting this particular character, and what it makes you think of this character. That's crucial. Please make a note of that. Language, structure, and form. So when we think about language, we're thinking about things such as metaphors, similes, the use of adjectives, oxymorons. When we're thinking about structure, we might be thinking about iambic pentameter, the use of punctuation, the use of rhyming couplets, how long the sentences are. Also form, remembering that this is a piece of drama. So what is the dramatic impact of this particular scene? Where do you think the characters will be placed? How do you think they will be speaking? In whispers or in shouts? Remember that this is a piece of drama, so it's important to understand and think about the impact that it would have on the stage. So firstly, we're going to look at annotating. What impact is the text having on the audience, which is you? Remember, you are the audience. You have to put yourself in the audience's shoes. So when you're annotating, that is a crucial question. What impact is the text having on you? I always tell students that it's important to consider what the extract makes you think. So what do you think about the particular characters? What do you think about society of this time? What do you think about the situation that is happening? Also, what does it make you imagine? How do you picture these characters? How do you picture this particular scene? Do you think it's at night time? Do you think it's during the day? And what impact will that have on the audience? Perhaps if it's a scene at night, maybe it's something secretive. Maybe somebody's plotting another person's demise. Also, what the extract makes you conclude. This particular question asks you, to what extent do you think Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet as a good father? You will have to come to some conclusion. Do you think Shakespeare presents Lord Capulet as a good father overall, or is he an aggressive father? Is he a controlling father? So you have to come to some conclusion. For me, these three things are important for any literary text that you study, whether it's Julius Caesar, Macbeth, A Christmas Carol, An Inspector Calls, Frankenstein. No matter what the text, consider what it makes you think, what it makes you imagine, and what it makes you conclude. So let's take a look at the extract. At this point in the play, Lord Capulet and Paris are discussing Juliet. So I would like you to follow with your copy of the extract. Paris: but now, my lord, what say you to my suit? Suit meaning my marriage proposal. Capulet: but saying o'er what I have said before. My child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride, ere we may think her ripe to be a bride. We notice the rhyming couplets there. Characters often speak in rhyming couplets, what we call closed couplets, when they are very conclusive about their ideas. That means they're decided, they've made up their mind. Paris: younger than she, a happy mother's maid. So Paris is clearly trying to be quite persuasive here and convince Lord Capulet that his daughter is ready for marriage, despite her young age. Capulet. And too soon marred are those early made. Marred means to be marked, to be harmed. The earth has swallowed all my hopes but she's the hopeful lady of my earth. But woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part. And she agreed, within her scope of choice lies my consent in fair according voice. So notice that there are lots of rhyming couplets, closed couplets here. Choice, voice, heart, part. So that's really important to remember that Capulet here is very conclusive. He's almost decided. Not almost. He appears as a very decisive person at this point. Now, what we're going to do, we are going to think about which quotations that we could pull from this extract to discuss and write about how Capulet is presented as a father, as a good father, by Shakespeare. So the first quotation we're going to look at is, "My child is yet a stranger." Just make sure you can locate that in the text. Pause the video if you need to. And then we are going to analyze this particular quotation. My child is yet a stranger. Notice the language here. This is what we call a possessive pronoun. Here, you will be able to score marks, or at least be awarded, rather than score, or at least be awarded for your ability to take out the language devices and recognize the language devices in the text. But that's a possessive pronoun. My is something that you possess, mine or my. Now we need to come to our interpretation. The use of that possessive pronoun presents Lord Capulet perhaps as a protective father. So this shows that he is a good father, if you like. He's very protective over his daughter. He calls her my child. So clearly he feels a great deal of responsibility for his daughter. However, and this is an important thing to do, try and give different interpretations of one particular quotation. This also presents Lord Capulet as a controlling, domineering father. So here, he's calling her my child. Perhaps he sees her as a possession, that he is the one in control and can manipulate his daughter and command her to do his will at his bidding. This is your AO1. You will score quite highly if you said something like that. You'll be awarded or rewarded quite a high level, if you like, for offering a different interpretation. This also gives you a mark for AO3, which is your understanding of the context, because this is typical of the time. In the Elizabethan era, at the time that the play was written, parents were seen as the overarching guardians of their children, especially fathers and daughters. So typically, when a woman was a maiden, that means she was unmarried, she would be under the control of her father. And from her father's control, she would then be passed on to her husband, who would have her control. So women were not allowed to own property. They clearly didn't have the vote. They were not allowed to work. They were housewives, essentially. So this is important that you remember that this is typical of the time. We might see this as unusual in the 21st century, where children have a lot more autonomy. Autonomy means freedom. But if you can link your quotation to the context, then you're able to do very well and you're able to hit the different assessment objectives. If we unpick this quotation even further, and this is a crucial skill that you must do not have one quotation and not use it fully. I like to use the analogy of squeezing. When you're squeezing something, you're getting all of the juice, all of the liquid out, all of the goodness. And that's what you want to do with each quotation. Make sure you choose rich quotations, as you'll also get marks for picking quotations, what the examiner calls judiciously. Judiciously means you are a good judge of quotations and you're able to take the right ones. So, Lord Capulet also calls his daughter a stranger. This might reveal that he's kind-hearted. He sees her as innocent and perhaps naive to the ways of the world, so he wants to protect her. He's quite a thoughtful father, so clearly he's a good father if he's thinking about his daughter's personal welfare and her own happiness and how she may be harmed through marriage. However, we also give the contrary a different interpretation. Perhaps this shows that he's out of touch. I think there's a double entendre in this particular quotation. Double entendre means there's a word that has two meanings and it's uncertain. So stranger, meaning she's a stranger in the world, she is naive, she's inexperienced, so he needs to be quite protective of her. However, perhaps she's a stranger to him. If we think about it, she marries Romeo after approximately 24 hours of seeing him. And she is very crucial in that marriage. She doesn't take a back seat and just do what he says. She sends the nurse out to inquire after Romeo, which shows that she's not as naive and as innocent as her father thinks. And this links back to the central theme in the play of child and parent relationships, and parents not really knowing their children and not having very close relationships. So perhaps Shakespeare was critiquing parenting in the Elizabethan era as parents being out of touch with their children and distant. Now, over to you. I've given you two examples of how you must squeeze the quotation, interpret and understand the text. Make sure you still have your extract in front of you and a pen. As the first quotation, you are going to start squeezing and analysing for AO1, AO2 and AO3, which is context, is right to be a bride. That's the quotation that you're now going to analyse. You need to do the following four things. Identify the use of language. So think about what kind of language is being used here, which language techniques. In the example that I gave you, there was use of double entendre, there were use of possessive pronouns. You also need to ensure that you make an interpretation of this text. So once you've identified the use of language, make an interpretation. I would perhaps say make the interpretation first and then think about what language device or language technique is being used. Try to make a connection between the social and historical context in the same way that we did with the two quotations that you saw beforehand, showing that parenting, being domineering and controlling as a parent was typical for the Elizabethan era. You also need to annotate your copy of the text. So I would say pause the video now and do those four things with that particular quotation. The next quotation that you will need to analyse is, "But woo her gentle parish, get her heart, all the while thinking about how does this present, or how far does this present Lord Capulet as a good father? And remember, try to offer different interpretations. Pause the video now and do those same 4 things for this particular quotation. Okay, we're coming to the end of the tutorial and we're just going to recap on the things that we have covered. So we have learned to annotate the text, which is crucial, making sure you really get to grips with your understanding of the text, that you read for meaning. This is so important to develop your AO1 skills, Assessment Objective 1, which is reading, interpreting and understanding the text. And finally, you've learned to understand and make accurate interpretations of the text. I'd just like to remind you that a short quiz will follow in the next few days. This is really important that you do this quiz so that you can test your learning and see how much progress you're making and which skills you can remember.